I'd like to welcome to the stage Grainne Lynch, Supply Chain Sustainability at IBM Consulting.
Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure listening to the previous speakers. It's just so wonderful to see it being organised, firstly, by an education organisation that really truly has global reach.
I would like to ask you, what has been your experience with the expansion of AI in the past few years, and how is that really affecting the transformation to sustainability supply chains?
We have a platform called Ethics. And Ethics is a combination of an investment by IBM, but also working with two major CPG brands, which is Unilever and the other one is Reckitt. And the issue that both of these companies had, they were talking to each other, was really in understanding what was the risk around human rights infringements in their supply chain. They really didn't know, after a certain number of suppliers, where risk-related commodities were actually being sourced from. And the example that they came across primarily that was impacting them was palm oil. And the reason that palm oil is a risky commodity is that, first of all, it's a very key ingredient in a huge number of products. So it's in shampoo, it's in soap, it's in our foodstuffs, it's in the products that we eat. So it's in a huge number, and the number of tons of palm oil being consumed by these companies was absolutely huge. So there was no doubt in their minds that there was a possible risk to those companies because of the sheer volume of production and purchasing that was in this commodity. But they didn't know where the problems were. If there is an issue, so the issue on palm oil is related to the fact that there are areas of the earth being clear felled and deforested and to make way for huge palm oil plantations. These are areas of the earth primarily located around the equator that have also unstable government and that are also very, very likely to cause issues to Indigenous families living around the equator, potentially, and also a risk for modern slavery and child labor. So we're talking deforestation, we're talking about infringements on human rights, people, we're talking about issues in Indigenous communities and folks that don't necessarily have the right voice. And we're talking about an unknown and unseen quantity of risk to very, very large brands for a commodity that is ubiquitously within an awful lot of the products. So therefore, that was the risk and that was the problem statement. How do we figure out what the supply chain resilience equation needs to be for these organizations? So we looked at their supply chain, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, etc., gathered all the data together, but also how would we actually figure out if that data was actually true, where the actual risk is coming from. And so we utilized an AI capability, and we looked at sourcing some of this AI capability from outside of IBM, and they would actually help us from the data. So we would take unstructured data from the internet around shipments, around locations of palm oil facilities, and try to infer that using AI. So the actual permutations and the calculations of that, I couldn't get into details about because obviously that's very sensitive to IBM. But through this technology, we were able to actually infer if we could see a facility in a certain region, then what was the probability that that facility was operating correctly? And if it wasn't, and if there was a risk factor, then what is the potential risk to the companies that we were working with? And that leap from an issue highlighted maybe in social media or on the internet somewhere, what was the inferred potential risk to those companies? And that's what they wanted to find out about. And that's where AI came in to try and gather all of that information, make sense out of it, and infer a sensible amount of risk onwards up to those companies.
Thank you so much for answering the question. As global markets continue to expand, to really find those, risks and then avoid them, reduce them. And thank you so much for your time here and sharing, all of your insight that you have today.